I am the portals between time and space. I am the one who takes a breath of fire to get going. I am the divine spark that invites a new brilliance which dawns, a ray of sunlight that illuminates, and a ray that descends. The fire lights up in me, and its warmth expands the world. Hello everyone, I'm AJ. I'm a conscious channel together with my husband Tom from Speaking from Source, and today we're going to take you inside the Great Pyramid, remembering our adventures from February in 2022, where we activated the consciousness grid through special ceremonies together with Matias in the Great Pyramid of Cheops. The Great Pyramid is important, of course, because it represents the axis of planetary consciousness on Earth. And it's from here where the Flower of Life network first began. That is the land of Egypt. So that's why Matias chose Egypt, and especially the Grand Pyramid, as it is the central node of the planet. Our objective would be to first hone and attune our physical bodies inside the King's Chamber. We were to do this by singing mantras to set up the group tone for his channeling. And of course, each group inside the pyramid throughout that time had a different and unique channeling by Matias. He said, sometimes we go to heaven, sometimes we go to hell, depending on the task that we're doing at the moment. Of course, it's not about you specifically. We then anchored the letters of the nodes we represented through vocalizing them together intentionally. We went through each of the concepts of the letters to spread it out into the network via the main Earth portal and up into the consciousness grid. I remember that day, or that night, as we drove from Cairo to the Giza Plateau. It was around 10 p.m. and the lights illuminating the pyramid had already been turned off. But as we approached, I was able to see their massive black silhouette against the velvet blue of the night sky, and I was immediately struck by their energy. And it was in that moment of first seeing the pyramids that I realized, even from a distance, I could sense that this was not just an ancient structure, but it was a sentient being. Now keep in mind that I had in part one, as you may recall, missed the full day of activities at the Kundalini gathering place with its spectacular view of the pyramids. So seeing them at night on the way to do this special work inside the Great Pyramid was even more powerful for me, being my first impression and contact with the pyramids, as it was for this very specific task and activity. And it was, in fact, exactly what I wanted. In a way, I'd already made up my mind that, that's what I wanted to do. And as it turned out, Spirit orchestrated things for that to happen with those delays. Quite interesting. In the weeks beforehand, I had a sense that my Arcturian light body was standing sentinel outside the entrance to the Great Pyramid. And it was an unusual experience to sort of have this bilocation, to be in two places at once. But as we entered the Giza Plateau and disembarked the bus, I could feel myself reunite. And the pyramids were bathed in this incredible moonlight. So they're actually quite illuminated, despite not having the artificial lights that were on the pyramid at the time. Now, the pyramid, of course, is one of the tallest structures on Earth. It actually remained the tallest structure on Earth for over 3,800 years. Each of us came representing our own planetary node, and as you may recall from part one, mine was Argentina. The objective was to work with our geological nodes to release built-up energy and tension, so that the new network can flow smoothly and according to its new position at the North Pole. The node of Egypt is one of the most important, as it's a central planetary node, and it was therefore central to creating the new planetary consciousness network. I believe our group was the second group to go in on the first night to the King's Chamber. We were scheduled to be in there at 11 p.m. Our TH group of 32 was the last in after the Y and the BH group that were already settled inside. And I was the second last person to enter with my group leader Kike behind me. Climbing up on the first few steps of the massive boulders that led into the exterior entrance, we each silently stated our name and asked permission of the pyramid to enter and allow us entry before moving inside. Once inside, I was struck by the long inclination of the passageway leading up to the grand gallery of the Pyramid of Khufu. And as we each made our way up in revered silence, the opportunity to fully stand up presented itself once we reached the grand gallery. And it was part relief, but it was also part exhilaration. For here are the massive stone blocks that are set out, one sort of each stepping in to the other in proximity to create a chamber so unique that the engineers today can't even explain how they're able to get those massive stone structures to come inwards to each other. And the Grand Gallery, of course, is surrounded by 2.6 million massive limestone blocks. So it's quite an engineering feat unto itself to create that chamber surrounded by all those blocks in the pyramid itself. Sensing this space with my own eyes was almost an out-of-body experience. I'd read so much about this particular space, the Grand Gallery. I'd seen it, so many pictures of it in books since my childhood. And here I was physically standing in it and to perform spiritual ceremony, no less. It was just an exhilarating experience for me. The height of the Grand Gallery is almost 30 feet and its length is over 100 feet inside. So it's just a massive space. And yet, like everything in the pyramid, it's completely devoid of hieroglyphics, which is very unusual as most structures in Egypt created by the Egyptians are lined with paintings and reliefs and hieroglyphics indicating their purpose and the ceremonies that were to take place. The entrance to the King's Chamber is just beyond the Grand Gallery. It's via another small passageway, which was about 5 feet by 5 feet. So you had to sort of crouch down to get inside. But as I took my place, I was one of the last people to do so. I was seated cross-legged in front and to the right side of Matias. There was a couple of bright fluorescent lights in the corners, which was the only illumination inside. Now, the King's Chamber, it's about 17 feet by 34 feet. And what's unique about it is that it's entirely constructed of granite. And this is an extremely strong stone. It withstands erosion and it also resists heat, which is interesting. Temperature inside at the time, I remember, was comfortably warm and somewhat humid. It was almost like the resting human body itself. It had a warmth and a comfortability about it that almost seemed organic. It was very interesting. I remember the last remaining light was turned off as Matias allowed himself to step in and do a full trance channeling. And as he did so, he made these sounds that were very similar to our Aboriginal didgeridoo, and it filled the space with that, amazing energy that seemed to come up from his root chakra and the root chakra of planet Earth itself. And as we began a meditation of alignment, Matias asked us to acknowledge our ancestors and connect with them. He said to honor our ancestors. We thank them because they have done the very best that they could. And he asked our ancestors to be present with us at that moment. He then said to acknowledge our parents and thank them, for if it were not for them, we would not be here. He asked us to remember that we chose our specific bloodline for this specific moment because of the genetic information contained in it would allow us to do the work of elevating the planetary consciousness, which I thought was quite fascinating. We took many deep breaths and began to sing in tones of the 3 breaths of the universe. Hum, het, hum. Hum, het, hum. Hum, het, hum. And then the being that came through Matias spoke with his first words in French, which were a welcome. He then said to thank our ego, for that drive was the drive that got us here, that desire, that persistence, that fire. You would not exist without your ego. We were guided to be conscious and thank our physical bodies For without them, we could not be where we were right now. And after all I'd been through, and after all many others had been through to make it to this very point, it was just amazing to have this acknowledgement come through in the channeling of what it took for me and many others to really get here and be present at that time. It was just a reminder how Spirit is so omnipresent and so omni-aware of you and those in every moment. We're never separated. We're never alone. It was just an amazing to hear that at that particular time after the huge adventure that I'd taken and many others had taken to be present for that to occur. The channeling continued, and he asked, "Do you wonder about the times that you feel sad, anger, or hate? It's because there's darkness on the planet." And he said, "How can you experience lightness when there's darkness?" He said, "You do so by being and embodying the light. If you say you are the light, then you must bring the light to this earth and bring heaven on earth. Love your evil." The channeling continued. "Do you realize what you're doing now? You are here to bring the light. Are you willing to allow what needs to come through and let go of all of your expectations? Embrace your darkness and fears, but do not let them take over. Simply acknowledge them, for we are perfect even with our darkness." He then asked us to introduce our names out loud. Introduce us with the I am, our first name and our last name, so that we could be introduced to the space itself, and then introduce our planetary nodes. We were then asked to embody the darkness of our node, and then embody its lightness. We sang our mantra, and then each of the groups sang their letters in harmony, the Y, the H, and TH, several times. We sang to open up the 9 dimensions, and as we sang, we perceived music that can only be described as angelic, and I'm not the only one to say this, and I'm not the only one to have heard it. Several reported this angelic music that accompanied with them, not just in the visit that we had at the pyramid, but other successive visits during the successive nights that we were doing this with Matias. He then stated, "You are the priests and the priestesses of the Idyllians. Picture yourself 12,000 years ago in harmony with the energy of the planet, in harmony with the vibration of the environment, of the plants and of the animals. Integrate this and take it into your own communities to bring heaven on earth. Release any tensions. Let go of your expectations. Let go of everything, for you have everything that you need. Just look inside. Let everything you hang on to simply go through you and release." He then sang, "We are the angels of light." For there was only lightness, and we were blessed by these angels who were connected now by a vibrational sound structure that we had created through our chanting and singing. Throughout our time in the Great Pyramid, many reported sensing beings, sensing different lights, and even looking out to see a portal opening above us. As I sat cross-legged on the floor, I had my hands making contact with the granite floor as I swung and swayed gently as my Kundalini energy opened forward. And it was fascinating. It appeared that the solidness of the granite that I was on gave way to a spongy, organic-like sensation. And at that moment, and for much of my time there, it seemed as if we were in the belly of a living entity. It was like, for me, being in the belly of a lion. It was large, warm, and organic. And I could even sense its heart beating. Perhaps the most amazing sensation I experienced as we chanted and as we sang and as we were in this meditation together in this harmonic sound structure in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid of Khufu as we approached midnight. I could literally hear the singing and chanting of male and female angels. It was a very high-pitched and exquisitely beautiful sound. And it was the heavenly angel choirs that were joining us in the hundreds, possibly even the thousands, that had joined us in that moment. And I know this was true for me because I've actually heard the heavenly choirs in my psychic ear twice before in my life. So I knew to recognize it. I knew kind of what it sounded like. But this was very special. It was something I never expected being together with the angelic realms like this before. And it was an experience that I'll never forget and for which I'm entirely grateful for. Many people actually reported this heavenly music and this being joined by the heavenly leagues of angels. And it was really amazing because I remember as we spoke or as we chanted, sometimes Matias would give a gesture to complete our singing or our chanting, and we would. But I would hear them, I would continue to hear them chant. And I could actually hear certain words, but the only word I remember was them reciting heavenly. Like it was heavenly, 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 over and over again. It was just exquisitely sweet and beautiful. And as I mentioned, there were leagues of them. It was truly, truly phenomenal. So that was our experience inside the Great Pyramid of Cheops. It was just sensational. I mean, who gets to go in at midnight to do a private channeling with someone like Matias and do this spiritual work with the conscious recognition that we're in the great node, the central node of the planet. And we were releasing and working on releasing and the flow of light through these different nodes that we each brought at that period of time. Many of us wrote down our thoughts and contributed to the experiences inside the Great Pyramid that actually helped jog my mind as well. And to some members in our group specifically, I just wanted to thank Amy and Michelle and Sophie, Stephen, Blair, Joan, Lorna, Maud, Dorothy and Veronique, because they had actually documented a lot of this as well to bring you this story together with my own recollections. So thank you so much. I am so grateful. Look out for the next part coming up. It's pure joy.